Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another hand review, and today I want to mainly talk about 3-bet and 4-bet strategies, what are good or bad ideas in general and why. And I found this awesome hand from the Texas Card House, and as you can see they play in a 5-5-10 game, so a 3 blind game. The big blind is 10 bucks, the small blind is 5 bucks, and you have another small blind basically that's also 5 bucks. Pretty simple. When you ever play in a 3 or 4 blind game, just make sure to treat the second blind as a small blind. So you have to play fairly tight because you're always out of position in the worst position ever. So yeah, just treat it like a second small blind and you're good to go. So yeah, let's take a look what happened so far. So Big L is in undergun and he makes it 35 bucks with jacks. So far so standard, I'd say. Big L is an undergun +2 and he goes ahead and he 3-bets to 125. Yeah, sizing wise he's in position, so I think he can go down a little bit. So maybe like 110, 115 would be definitely a bit better. You don't need to make it so big when you're in position, even when you're deep, because you still have the huge positional advantage. Yeah, let's think about the hand. A6 suited. Always think about your whole range, and when you think about your value 3-bet range, we are not 3-betting a ton of hands, right? So maybe a hand like ace king suited, sometimes tens, jacks, queens, kings, aces. And of course we also want to 3-bet most suited Broadway, so hands like ace 10 suited and ace jack suited and king jack suited and ace queen offsuit, stuff like this, right? And when you want to be a little bit more deceptive, I think 3-betting some hands like the wheel aces would be a good idea, of course with somewhat low frequencies, so ace deuce to ace 5, because you can also make straights. And with ace 6 it's really hard to make a straight, right? And like I mentioned, you have all the ace 10 suited and ace jack suited. You can just make nut flushes with those hands. No need to throw a hand like ace 6 suited, because the post-flop playability is not that great. And yeah, we just cannot second barrel so many turn cards, because we are not going to improve on so many turn cards with ace 6 suited. When you want to mix in some suited connectors, even this is I think a little bit better. Hands like 7-8 suited or 8-9 suited from time to time, why not? But usually in those live games I would just skip it. I mean, yeah, they call with so many trash hands that they are supposed to fold, and then you want to be a little bit more value heavy. So yeah, he goes ahead. Cutoff folds, tens, also somewhat tight. I mean, against unknowns, probably not the worst given the positions. But now here comes the fun part. Barton Kaya has pocket queens. What a nice hand, right? So he is probably going to 4-bet, right? Because this is the only thing he can do here. He thinks about it. 3.5k stack. And he makes the call. Here we go. Fun part. He makes the call with pocket queens on the button and initiative. I mean, what is going on? Because you have a huge problem when you flat call too many hands in position. Because you open the door to win the minimum. Because as you can see, when you 4-bet, first player has jacks, he is in a super tough spot. Super ugly, cause a 3-better, Big Daddy can have a super strong hand, and of course we are on the button, also have a fairly strong 4-bet range overall. So he is in a shitty spot, and the same applies to Big Daddy. He can either call, he's super dominated, and yeah, we have position and initiative, so the best situation in the whole world. And you don't need a super large 4-bet range, but at least with some bluffs and your top range, always go ahead and 4-bet. And always when you think there are some worse hands that can call, especially when you see some loser opponents making loose 3-bets pre-flop, calling too wide against the 4-bet, of course you want to 4-bet a ton of strong hands, because now when you just flat call, you open the door for a ton of callers, and of course a player with jacks can never make a mistake. Even if he has like sixes or fives or whatever, you always give him the correct odds to set mine and to outdraw you. So in general, it's way easier to play with a 4-bet or fold strategy, especially really deep. You can establish some cold calls in position if you want to, but overall it's just so much easier to play with a 4-bet or fold strategy pre-flop. So let's see what happened. Of course, jacks have to call, super easy call. I mean, with jacks, there's not too much to discuss. Most of the time you want to call, especially when Big Daddy is not going out of line in every single hand. If he's super out of line, I also don't mind 4-betting when you think Kaya would 4-bet queens plus himself, because then with jacks you have the best hand the vast majority of the time. And you should also think about those possibilities, right? Always try to put your opponent on a realistic hand range. And yeah, with queens now the fun starts, obviously. So 3-handed to the flop. Because with queens, on which board texture do you want to go broke? On low, low, low? Do you fold on ace x right away? Do you fold on king x right away? Super, super tough. Yeah, as you can see, we found a fun board texture, multi-way. Something for everyone. Because jacks have top set, ace6 has the nut flush draw, and one overcard, and queens is the overpair. As you can see, a6 suited goes ahead and c-bets. I think this is definitely legit. He was a 3-better. He still has initiative, so he goes ahead and bets. That's totally fine. And with queens, he is in a shitty spot, as you can see, because Big Daddy is still uncapped. When Kia goes ahead and 4-bets, Big Daddy is definitely somewhat capped, especially when you think about the overpairs, because yeah, when Kia 4-bets and Big Daddy has kings or aces, he's probably going to 5-bet jam or 5-bet, so way easier to navigate post-flop. And of course, you're also tougher to play when you include some bluff 4-bets as well. So yeah, Kaya thinks about it, and he goes ahead and makes the call. Yeah, and Big Al has top set. Yeah, not the worst flop for him. He thinks about it. What should I do? Should I fold, call, or raise? I think multi-way on a super drawy board, it's definitely a really good idea to raise right away. There are so many draws, so many good turn cards, and you're out of position. So you definitely want to avoid that the turn goes check check all the time. When the turn is a brick and people realize free equity, and this will happen fairly often. So especially out of position, I would also raise with a very high frequency on the flop of jacks, because yeah, Kaya can have some jack x combination that he's not willing to fold. He can have strong draws that he's not willing to fold. And Big Daddy is uncapped. He can still have queens, kings, aces, and most people go nowhere with an overpair in a 3-bet pot when the SPR, the stack to pot ratio, is fairly low. So I really like the raise. He, let's see how big he made it. So he raised to 875 to 4. Yeah, well, that's fine. I mean, when he just has 2k, everything's fine. You can also just rip it. And yeah, Big Daddy says, all right, let's gamble. And this is a problem, as you can see, right? So he is in a super, super shitty spot with queens on Jack 4-5. Because, as you can see, Big Daddy only has the nut flush draw. Of course, he's crushed against Big L. So here it depends how good you know your opponents. When you know Big L will not have a bunch of draws that he's ripping it in on the flop, folding is totally fine, but it's really, really hard, and he should definitely take his time to think about and not just snap fold. So yeah, as you can see, when you just 4-bet preflop, you win probably all the money, or you get it in with queens against a6 on this board texture, so it's definitely not getting better than that. And yeah, he just called preflop, and this is why he missed out on it. Or he 4-bets and both player folded. This would also be fine, right? When you 4-bet, win all the money pre, that's fine. But really try to avoid flatting with super strong hands preflop. You really need a reason for it, and it's usually not a reason that your opponent can 5-bet, because 5-bets are super rarely. Most of the time, if someone 5-bets, they have a super strong range, so you just assign them a range. When you can go broke or call against this range, it's fine, and if not, you have to lay your hand down. But you still save a ton of money, because when you just flat call on most board textures, you are going to go broke. So be cautious, always think about 3-bets and 4-bets and why you want to do those. And this was a fairly good example why you should do it and how to really lose a ton of money by just cold calling 3-bets. So yeah, please avoid it. If you have further questions, always feel free to comment. So yeah, stay tuned for the next video, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.